The heart. It beats without fail for your entire life. One heartbeat every second, moving blood around your body. Hi, and welcome to today's lesson on the heart. We're starting Chapter 1, Circulation and Immunity. So, as a general outline, the human circulatory system is comprised of a transport medium, the blood, contained in a closed system of blood vessels. And closed system again means nothing goes in and nothing comes out. And that's like our ideal. Nothing goes out of our circulatory system. And it's circulated by the action of our heart, which is a powerful pump. So today we're going to look at the heart. So the circulatory system has 5 different functions. One is to provide cells with the nutrients it needs and to remove wastes that it produces. Transports chemical messengers or hormones to targeted tissues. It protects us against disease by transporting antibodies and white blood cells to areas of injury or infection. It distributes heat throughout the body, and it helps maintain acceptable fluid levels and chemical composition through the process of homeostasis. So the circulatory system goes through and around all the cells of our body. We have an arterial system, which travels away from the heart, and a venous system, which travels towards the heart. So the heart consists of 4 chambers made from cardiac muscle. The top 2 are the left and right atria, and singular would be atrium, and then the bottom 2 are the left and right ventricles. So here's a image of a heart. So we list the left and right atrium as they would be in our body. So they're going to be opposite the left and right sides on a picture page. The atria are at the top, the ventricles are at the bottom. When you look at this one, you can see that the left ventricle is bigger than the right ventricle, and that's because it pumps blood to the whole body system as opposed to just the lungs. So it needs to be a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. So when we look at the heartbeat, the atrium beat relatively synchronously, and the ventricles beat relatively synchronously. And we can see on the outside of this heart structure is the coronary arteries and veins, which provide blood to the cells of the heart. So the heart is surrounded by a pericardium, which is a fluid-filled sac that protects the heart and surrounds it. So it cushions it a little bit from impact, as well as it allows it to slide across a smooth surface instead of the inside of our rib cage, so the outside of the heart isn't damaged. The left and right atrium are thinner-walled heart chambers that pump blood just down to the ventricles. So the atria pump, it goes through a valve into the ventricles. Then the left and right ventricles are thick, muscular-walled heart chambers, and they pump blood to the lungs from the right ventricle and throughout the body from the left ventricle. So the vena cava is our large veins that carry the deoxygenated blood from our body back to the heart. We have 2. We have the superior vena cava, which returns blood from the upper body and the head, and the inferior vena cava, which returns blood from the lower body to the heart. The heart structure also contains pulmonary arteries, which are large arteries that leave from the right ventricle and go towards the lungs. And we'll also have a left and right pulmonary artery. And then we have pulmonary veins, which are large veins that carry oxygenated blood from the lungs back to the atrium, the left atrium. So we'll have, again, a left and right pulmonary vein. Now, typically arteries in our body carry oxygenated blood, but arteries actually travel away from the heart because the pulmonary artery will carry deoxygenated blood. Veins carry blood towards the heart. Typically, this is deoxygenated, except for the pulmonary vein, which carries oxygenated blood. The aorta is the largest artery in the body, and it takes oxygenated blood from the left ventricle of the heart to the body tissues. And once it's in the aorta, it will go and separate into 3 separate arteries, one to the head, one to the upper torso, and then one to the lower torso and legs. There's also a septum separating the left and right sides of the heart. If somebody's born with a hole in the heart, typically it's in the septum. The reason we have that is so that the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood doesn't mix. And then we have coronary arteries, and you saw these on the picture of the actual heart. And these are veins and arteries that supply the cardiac muscle with oxygen and other nutrients. So they're not actually provided with nutrients from the blood inside the heart. So when we look at this structure of the heart, so coming in to the blood will come into the heart through the superior and inferior vena cava. And into the right atrium. Then from the right atrium, it goes through a valve into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it will follow up through the pulmonary arteries to the left and right lungs. There it becomes oxygenated and it will come back in through the pulmonary veins and into the left atrium. From the left atrium, it's going to go through another valve into the left ventricle. And then the last contraction of the heart is going to push blood out through the left ventricle from the aorta and to the body. And then it's going to repeat every second for your entire life. So the human heart is really a double pump. So it provides pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. So the pulmonary circulation comes from the right ventricle and goes to the lungs and then brings that back through the pulmonary veins back to the heart. And then systemic circulation is a circulation of blood from the left ventricle through the aorta to the body, and then through the superior and inferior vena cava back to the right atrium, so back to the heart. Now, that systemic circulation ensures that the body receives oxygen and nutrients, so all of our cells, and then also to have the wastes removed that are produced during cellular metabolisms. Coronary circulation provides nutrients and oxygen to the tissue of the heart itself through the coronary arteries. So we can look here at the coronary arteries and veins that are all over the surface of the heart, and this provides nutrients and oxygen to the heart cells and takes away wastes. That's our image of coronary circulation. So when we look at the pulmonary circulation, the right-hand side of the heart, the right atrium, picks up deoxygenated blood from the general circulation in the body. It's then pumped to the lungs for oxygenation, and this is pulmonary circulation. Cardiovascular system also has systemic circulation. So on the left-hand side of the heart, oxygenated blood is received from the lungs, and then it's pumped out to the head and the body. So we can look at this animation of blood through the heart. You don't need to know the specific names of the valves. It goes from the right atrium through the right ventricle, out through the pulmonary arteries, back in through the pulmonary veins, through the left atrium, left ventricle, and out from the aorta through to the whole body. So a heartbeat is the sound heard when the valves in the heart close. So before the ventricles contract, they're open and relaxed, and the valves between the atria and the ventricles are open, which allows the blood to flow from the atria to the ventricles. This phase of our heartbeat is called the diastole because our ventricles are relaxed. In the two-part contraction of the heart, first the atria, then the ventricles contract, and this is called the systole phase of the heart. The sound we hear from a heartbeat, lub-dub, is the sound that the heart makes when the valves are being closing. So the first sound we hear is the atrioventricular valves closing. Now this is the valves between the atria and the ventricles, preventing blood from going back up into the atria when the ventricles contract. And then the dub sound you hear is the closing of the valves from the right ventricle to the pulmonary arteries, and then from the left ventricle to the aorta. So we hear the sound of the valves closing to prevent, again, that backwards flow of blood. There's different things that can affect our heartbeat. One of them is emotions such as fear or excitement. So if you're afraid or scared or excited or anticipating things, typically your heart rate will increase. External changes in temperature can also increase your heart rate because your heart is trying to circulate blood quickly to cool you down. If you cool down, sometimes your heart rate will slow down because your body is trying to keep as much temperature in that thermal energy in that blood as much as it can, so it circulates it a little bit more slowly. And also exercise. So if our body increases its demand for oxygen, our heart will respond by increasing its rate of contractions to increase the amount of oxygen it can give to our body cells. So, regular cardiovascular exercise, whether it's running, swimming, or walking, improves the stretching ability of the heart and the surrounding blood vessels. So, as a result, this increases the stroke volume of the heart. So, the higher your stroke volume is, typically you can have a lower resting heart rate. So, high performance athletes or athletes that participate in regular cardiovascular exercise typically will have a lower than average resting heart rate. And this could be 45 or 50 beats per minute compared to the 70 beats per minute of a typical individual. And this is because they're able to pump more blood with each individual heartbeat.